So a year ago, around this time of year, I was living in Missoula, Montana. I had a favorite bowling alley that I liked to go there, and I could never remember uh, the owner, his name. He was Hungarian and he had a very long name, but I knew him by a nickname. I called him the Countdown Guy, and the reason for that is that there was a video that I like to watch, the Balloon Fest of '86. It was a disaster of an event. You can Google it if you want. And before they released a million balloons into the sky, there was this one guy who was counting down from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7. And the owner at the bowling alley looked like him. And so one day I said, would you mind if I call you the Countdown Guy? And he agreed to that. And I really loved counting down every time I saw him. And he and I would count down together. One time I had bowled, I think, a 200 something score, and just before the score showed up on the monitor, he counted down from 10, and so that was good. 5 years ago, I was traveling in Warsaw, Poland, when I got to know the owner's daughter. She was fascinated by the computer games that I was writing. She's not into computer science, she's actually into more of an art kind of degree. But she made some suggestions on how to display the game pieces and the board, and I'm still using ideas that she came up with all those years ago. I was hoping, because she was just starting college at the time, a little bit too young for me, but I kept her in the back of my mind thinking that I'll go back to Poland again. Unfortunately, the next couple of Computer Olympiad conferences were held in Taiwan and Macau, and then obviously COVID happened. And so I haven't seen her again, but I checked up with the hostel. They still run the place, and to my surprise, she remembers me. And one day I streamed myself while walking through Kirkland, and we had a virtual date, if you will, and that was nice. And more recently, during the lockdown, a lot of people were ordering takeout and delivery, and I used to actually eat out a lot less often than I now do because I have to bring up dietary restrictions, and I used to really despise it. But ever since the lockdown, I've been needing the human interaction. Now all of a sudden, explaining dietary restrictions, that doesn't seem so awkward anymore, especially in light of how everybody is being more mindful of their health anyway. The big problem I have with explaining dietary restrictions is not so much that I have to put the effort into it, it's how other people judge me when I explain it, right? So I go to a job interview, go on a first date, and people like to impute the fact that I'm missing out on all this food. I don't. But people stick their nose in other people's businesses. I just moved out of a house, actually, because I had relationship problems just like that with the landlord who I was living with. To give you an idea of how bothersome he was, he would worry about lighting. Like I'd be eating and the lights were not all turned on, right? They're kind of dim. Part of the reason I sometimes didn't like to turn all the lights on in the apartment was because of how cluttered everything was. I sometimes didn't want to see it. And he would worry about if I needed more lights and all that. I think I'm old enough to worry for myself. I think part of the problem is that his kids have all moved out of the house. That's part of the reason why he had a spare bedroom to rent. And he probably misses dealing with that. And to be honest, I could have been more patient with him, but my work demands were kind of high at the time. I was dealing with also personal crises at the time. In retrospect, I could have been a little bit more patient with that. But you see, life is so much more fun when you have 8 billion partners to mess with, right? To make mistakes with, to interact with, to laugh with. I'd rather have that than just the one.